All right, hey, it's Joel from the Hack Life, and I'm here with Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. He is a retired U.S. Army Ranger and paratrooper, and a former West Point psychology professor. He's also the director of Killology Research Group, and has actually developed the term Killology, and it's considered the study of psychological and physiological effects of killing and combat on the human psyche. Lieutenant Colonel, welcome to the show.
Hey, Joel, honored to be on board. I always try to start a podcast with something that's important. Um, when I was a kid, we had three networks, three channels on TV. It was all there was. There was a city newspaper, maybe two if you're a big city, and maybe a half a dozen national news magazines. And if you weren't on those, there was no way to get your voice heard.
Mm,
And now we've got true citizen journalism, the podcast. I mean, these things are amazing. We've broken
yeah.
through the roadblocks of these major news networks. We now have true citizen journalism. We can dig deeper. I've been on 60 Minutes and 2020, and it didn't amount to nothing. They cut it down to a couple of
Interesting.
minutes. They had no control of what they're going to say, and a week later, nobody cares, nobody remembers. But the podcast, you're able to dig in deep. People listen to podcasts are seeking deeper knowledge.
Yeah.
And the people providing the podcast, they're seeking a mechanism to pass on this wisdom. So I always honor the listeners for seeking that deeper knowledge and the guy putting it together. But most of all is the idea of these life hacks. This to me is the epitome of achievement of a podcast, to seek out those life hacks and try to distribute them.
Yeah.
I never really thought of it. That's really what my life in books are all about.
Hmm.
It's just finding these life hacks and be able to dig in. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to just dive into hacks and working through my books. That work
Yeah.
for you? You know,
Yeah, let's go.
you mentioned Killology. My first book is on killing. Came out in 1995. It's been updated since then. But 500,000 copies sold worldwide. It's translated a bunch of languages. Marine Corps commandants required reading. We're now in our 20th year of war. And throughout the war, it's been the commandant's required reading list, recommended reading, many, many lists. And the book is really simple, but it's a powerful insight that people, the killology, criminology is not about teaching people criminals. Psychology is not about teaching people psychos. And killology is not about teaching people to kill. It's about understanding the factors that enable and restrain killing. And people point to some horrible crimes. That proves that mankind is a killer. So, no, that's 1 in a million. I mean, literally, of the 330 million Americans in America, that's the one case you can point out. That's the
Yeah.
one in 300 million. You explained to me that 99.9% of our citizens go a lifetime never kill anybody or even seriously attempt to. Explain that.
Yeah.
Divorce, infidelity, layoff, traffic accidents. In a lifetime of provocation, less than 1 in 1,000 citizens will even seriously attempt to take a human life. Explain that. And
Yeah.
that's chronology.
Well, and I think, you've said in the past too, it seems like people don't want to talk about it. It's like taboo or like, ooh, we don't want to talk about it. But you, I think, have said in the past, and correct me if I'm wrong, but hey, the more we talk about it, the more it's not like this thing and it's not a pathology. It just
yes,
is.
yes, yes. Bringing it out in the open, talking about it, examining it. I begin on killing talking about, the sex has always been something that happened all around. Animals had sex, you all slept in one room. Sex was something noisy that adults did in the middle of the night, and then the Victorian era, we suddenly had private bedrooms and we had privacy and we
Mm.
compartmentalized this stuff. And the Victorians put skirts around the furniture because the legs were suggestive, and it was a
Ah,
time of sexual repression. Well, today we study sex and we look at it as an important part of life. But the repression in today's society is killing. And we're, simultaneously, we're looking at these horrendous movies, and at the same time, we got this opposition even talking about it. But I think the thing to understand about killology, two applications right now. First is in World War II, we found out most of the troops wouldn't pull the trigger. I mean, at the moment of truth, to save their lives, they just wouldn't pull the trigger. They'd be brave, they'd run ammo, do whatever you want, but they slam into that resistance. And it was a training flaw. We taught them to train to shoot bullseye targets. We have no known case any bullseyes ever attacking our troops. If you've been in the U.S. Armed Forces since the Korean War, you never once shot a bullseye. Man shaped silhouette, you hit the target, target drop, stimulus response, like a pilot in a flight simulator, like a kid in a fire drill. Modern military and law enforcement training makes killing a conditioned response. Under authority, under exactly the right circumstance, then and only then you shoot. And oh, by the way, the video games are doing the exact same thing to our kids. And that's kind of
Right.
the end of On Killing, where we talked about how the video games are enabling killing. And people say, oh, I played all those games. I'm not a killer. But something new is happening worldwide. And this is another kind of a life hack, another perspective that I want people to wrap their mind around. First remember that killing is so incredibly rare. And we study these dynamics that restrain and enable killing in society. We'll talk about that in a minute. But that we try to measure the violence by the murder rate. And the murder rate is being held down by medical technology. It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
The doctors are saving ever more lives. And the number of dead people completely underrepresent the problem. So, if we had World War II level technology in Iraq, we'd have 10 times as many dead American troops. And the same thing's true
Wow.
in our streets. If we had Vietnam level medical technology in Afghanistan, we'd have 4 times as many dead American troops. And the same thing is true in our streets. Right around the year 2000, at the late 1990s, we had a UMass Harvard study that said if we had 1960s technology, the murder rate would be 3 to 4 times what it is. So just between the 1960s and the 1990s, we cut murder to about a quarter of what would otherwise be. Or if
Wow.
it's like inflation. We talk about money, we talk about inflation adjusted dollars. If we compare murders between 1990s and 1960s, we've got to multiply by 4 in the 1990s to equal the number of murders. And we have inflation adjusted dollars. We need medically adjusted murders. And
Yeah.
so that data is 20 years old. One medical expert said he believes tourniquets alone may have cut the murder rate in half in just last decade. Cop slaps on a tourniquet, saves a life, you prevent a murder. Cop. Yeah, all cops carry tourniquets now.
Yeah.
Slap on a tourniquet, save a life, you've prevented a murder. 500,000 cops on duty every day between the 3 shifts. Another 500,000 EMS out there. Everybody has tourniquets. I carry tourniquets everywhere. If just 20 to 30 people a day slap on a tourniquet and save a life, we cut the murder rate in half. So
Wow.
this idea of how completely flawed, on the one hand, we say, oh, everybody's a killer. But on the other hand, we don't understand that the actual measurement rate, the number of dead people, completely misrepresents the situation. It's much worse than it looks. So we've got to look from both sides. On the one side, we're in denial. And the other side, we're completely misrepresenting the data. So we get a more measured opinion. And the thing to realize is that this is worldwide, that around the planet, across Europe, I got the data that I use in my presentations. Interpol data demonstrates this explosion of violence, the 20 most violent nations in the world. But when we talk about violence, the other thing to realize is there is no evil new gun. And you got to wrap your mind around that. People talk about semi-automatic, high-capacity military weapons. I hold up a picture of the M1 carbine. World War II, 6 million M1 carbines built. 20 or 30 round magazines, semi-automatic. They were junk. At the end of World War II, they were war surplus. They were scrap. These semi-automatic, high-capacity military weapons. This is not new. You want to think there's some evil new weapon out there. It's not. The guns didn't change. We changed. And I tell you, the violent media and the violent video games, their impact on children is profound. And that brings me to my book, Assassination Generation. I was invited to the White House to the Parkland School Massacre, gave a copy to the president. Was invited to the White House again last year, gave a copy to the vice president, and briefed him on media violence and what's going on there. And just recognize the fact that the data is there. We have the brain scan data.
Yeah.
violent visual imagery inflicted upon children. Now, this is very important. Nobody should be talking free speech. Nobody should be talking book banning. Nobody should be telling adults what they can or cannot do. But violent visual imagery inflicted upon children, and their body treats it like it's real. We
Yeah.
got to understand that. So, parenting, a parenting hack, everything you can do to keep your children free of television, movie, and video games is a blessing. And
Yes.
I have people come up to me every day. So my parents never had TV, we never had cable TV. We never had video games. My dad cut the cord to the television on the first day of summer and kicked us out the door. Every time they say it's the greatest gift my parents ever gave me. Never once has somebody said I cursed my parents for the TV I couldn't watch. Never once. So I'm telling you, the greatest gift you can give your children, and here's this huge life hack, is
Yeah.
to turn off the TV, turn off the video games. And they say, and the kids say, well, I'm bored. Boredom is good. Boredom is a state that drives you. It's because you're bored, you learn to read and become immersed in books. It's because you're bored, you do imaginative playing. It's because
Yes.
you're bored, you go outside and build a tree fort and play in the tree fort. Yeah, it's because you're bored, you go to the playground and play in the playground.
Yeah.
Boredom is a good thing. It's a state like hunger. Hunger is a
Yeah.
good thing. You go eat. Boredom is a good thing because it makes you go and live and fill your life full. Oh, we give him the video game and he just leaves us alone for the rest of the day. Oh yeah, you can feed him drugs and he'd do the same thing. And, and the thing to understand about the games is they're designed to be addictive, impossible to turn off.
Yeah.
Right now, 200 million people are online playing games online. We do this, and 0.05% say, oh, good time to quit the game. So we'll never do that again. We do this, and absolutely nobody quits. So they do more of that. It's a constant interactive feedback loop, computer driven, to have just the right color scheme, the right frequency, the right plot to make the game impossible to turn off. Even when there's an end state, like Tetris, you got to jump right back in and do it again. And I tell all you old timers out there, we all remember Tetris. Think Tetris on steroids with crack.
Yeah.
And each generation of games gets more addictive. And so adults are being destroyed by these games. Children are being eaten alive. And the games put us in a flow state, and we become incapable of keeping track of time. And we've got all this intrusive technology. We got cell phones and text messages in the middle of the night. People who text message you in the middle of the night without a darn good reason are not your friends. You tell them, I will block your ass right now. Do not do that. Friends don't do that to friends.
Well, or they might be working a night shift and they're up. I mean, you can't blame that if they're a sheepdog at night protecting you. Maybe they're just awake.
Oh, yeah. But I'm not asleep.
Yeah,
I'm not at work. I'm sleeping.
yes,
I
you're
don't
protecting your
interrupt you
sleep.
during your sleep. You don't interrupt me during my sleep. Yeah, but obviously we know each other's cycles and we respect it. But the whole dynamic of sleep deprivation, and here's just the most significant boom, world opening view that I can give you is to understand that we are currently in a worldwide epidemic of sleep deprivation. The intrusive movies, Netflix, the head of Netflix said our major competitor is not other online providers. Our major competitor is sleep. He flat said his goal is take your sleep. He
Wow.
wants you to binge watch his shows. He wants you to stay up all night watching these movies. That's their corporate goal is to take your sleep, and that kills people. And
Yeah.
so, thing to understand that these incredibly addictive video games. You got to recognize that they put us in a flow state. Suddenly, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Got no idea where the last 6 hours went. You got to start getting to go to work in 2 hours, and so you go to work with no sleep, and your spouse is sincerely ticked off. The research tells us that 15% of all divorces in America, video games are the cause. 15%. Video
Really?
game cause, yeah.
I'm
So
surprised.
just do an online search, video game divorce, boom, it'll come right up. The
Wow.
spouse says, okay, what's more important, your family or the game? Oh, that's easy. The game, divorce. So I tell people, there's nothing wrong with adults playing any game, but you got to set a timer. Block out an hour every night. Ding, the timer goes off. Use your steely and save the game and move on. Ah, I played a massive metamorphic on an orgasmic game. You can't do anything an hour, do a night. Okay, it's cool. Decide now what's important. Is your vow of marriage important? Is your oath as a peace officer important? Is your family important? Is your job important? Or is that game important? Decide now. That game's
Yeah.
like really important. It's cool. Quit your job right now. Move into your parents' basement. Draw unemployment. Buy a giant economy-sized bag of Cheetos. Play video games all night long. Millions of people are doing that. But you want to have a life. You want to have a job. Uphold your responsibility in your family and your marriage. To uphold your oath as a peace officer. You got to get those things under control. And what we know is 18 hours without sleep, your impaired judgment equal to 0.08 legally drunk.
Mm.
24 hours without sleep, your impaired judgment equal to 0.10 above legally drunk. 2 nights without sleep, and there's a lot of people doing that. They,
Yeah.
they play games all night, they stagger into work, they play games all night. Now they're on the third day without sleep. And 2 nights without sleep, and you are psychotic. Any graduate of Army Ranger School will tell about hallucinations on the third day without sleep. And so I tell people again, if you want to play those games, just live in your parents' basement and do it. But if you want to have a life, you got to get those games under control. Your family, your job. If somebody showed up at work drunk, we kick his ass. If he shows up to work sleep deprived because he played video games all night long, he needs his ass kicked. And so I'll see that the audience
I
of
love that.
100 military, 100 cops, and a bunch of looked at me like a deer in the headlights. Said, "Whoa, you're talking to me? That's
Yeah.
cool." Nobody ever told you that. It was a social blind spot. Now you know, and you can't deny. You know damn well I'm right, and you got to get those things under control. So this worldwide epidemic of sleep deprivation, three major causes of death have exploded worldwide. Suicides. Suicide is some of the military research says a sleep deprived soldier is up to 5 times more likely to take their life.
Wow.
Sleep deprivation may be the single greatest predictor of suicide. Taking your life is not a natural act. Taking your life, every living organism has a powerful drive to self preservation. To commit suicide, you have to have profoundly impaired judgment. Alcohol and suicide have always been closely related. Alcohol creates impaired judgment. You make a bad decision, never get a chance to rethink it. But the most pervasive form of impaired judgment is sleep deprivation. And children,
Yeah.
teen suicides worldwide have exploded. Tweenage, I call them teenagers, 10, 11, 12-year-olds. Teenage girls' suicide rate per capita has tripled in America in just the last decade. So a cop came up to me during, and here's parenting 101 for the 21st century. When you send your kid to bed at night, take their cell phone away from them.
Yeah.
No
Huge.
laptop in the room, no cell phone in the room. They got to the room and sleep. So a cop came up to me during the break. He said I had a good girl. He said she was an A student. She said, "Dad, it's embarrassing. You don't have to take my cell phone every night. You can trust me." He said, so I trusted her. Let her keep her cell phone. A little while later, she took her life. He said, my little girl took
Wow.
her life. He said, we never knew the hell she was living in until we looked at the text messages on her cell phone.
Mm.
Night after night of ceaseless, relentless, vicious bullying over the cell phone text message all night long. He said, and you need to understand, you can't just ignore that stuff. We're not wired that way. He said she's up all night long trying to defend herself, night after night, trying to find somebody to stand up for herself. He said, I knew my little girl was bullied to death. What I didn't understand until now, she was sleep deprived, tormented, and bullied to death in front of my eyes, and I let it happen.
Wow.
He said, I can't ignore that text message in the middle of the night. How can I expect my kids to? He said, the one thing on earth I could have done for my little girl was take her cell phone every night, let her turn off all the bad stuff in this world. This is it's truly cell phone addiction, video game addiction. It is a true addiction, and they go through withdrawal symptoms when you take it away from them. One of my favorite
Yeah,
groups
that's
is
true.
screenstrong.com, www.screen, S-C-R-E-E-N, strong, S-T-R-O-N-G.com, screenstrong.com.
I'll put
And
that in the
they
show notes.
they provide a wonderful online resource for video game addiction and cell phone addiction, and they use a medical model. It is an addiction. So remember, so we got suicides have exploded, teen suicides have exploded, traffic deaths have exploded worldwide. Decade after decade, for half a century, we brought traffic deaths down, airbags, seatbelts, medical technology. And
Yeah.
now worldwide, they're back up again. What is the new factor? Sleep deprivation. They,
Mm,
we, we know that alcohol and sleep are the two major factors in traffic accidents. And we're now in the middle of this worldwide epidemic of sleep deprivation. There's a reason why truck drivers and airline pilots and air traffic controllers, nuclear power plant operators, tugboat operator, ferryboat operator, Amtrak engineers are all required by law get enough sleep. Because the greatest predictor of airline crashes and truck crashes and railroad crashes is sleep deprivation. So is there really any surprise that a worldwide epidemic of sleep deprivation has created a worldwide epidemic of suicide and traffic deaths? But they're not going to connect the dots for you. They're
yeah.
not going to tell you, don't watch Netflix all night long. They're going to tell you just the opposite. They're not going to tell you these video games are designed to be addictive and you got to have the discipline to turn them off. They're not going to tell you that. They're not going to tell you your kid will become addicted to that cell phone and you should not give your kid a cell phone. They're not going to tell you that. They're not going to tell you that the impact of media on your children is very hard and you should protect your child from media as much. They're not going to tell you that. So the third major cause of death that has exploded is the opiate epidemic. Why opiates?
Yeah.
Why and prescription opiates have always been there. Well, why are suddenly opiates and prescription opiates a drug of choice? Sleep deprivation creates chronic pain. Doc, I heard all the time, give me a pill. If you don't need a pill, you need more sleep. Sleep deprivation, the tendons and muscles never get a chance to fully relax. And especially caffeine overdoses. You must cut off caffeine shortly after lunch
Mhm.
because it stops you from getting deep cycle sleep. That's when the tendons and muscles fully relax. And caffeine doesn't make you not sleep. Caffeine makes it easier to stay awake and harder to have good quality sleep. So this caffeine addiction and the sleep deprivation is the critical factor in the opiate epidemic. They're not going to tell you that sleep deprivation creates chronic pain. They're not going to tell you that mega doses of caffeine stop you from getting deep cycle sleep and that creates chronic pain. Oh, by the way, sleep deprivation and lack of deep cycle sleep is one of the greatest predictors of Alzheimer's.
Mhm.
You're setting yourself for Alzheimer's. A study just last year says lack of deep cycle sleep may be the single greatest predictor of Alzheimer's. And so caffeine prevents deep cycle sleep.
Mm.
So they're not going to tell you this worldwide epidemic of sleep deprivation. They're not going to tell you cut off caffeine shortly after lunch. They're not going to tell you that. So we've got all of these industries that are invested in sleep deprivation and caffeine abuse. And the result is a worldwide explosion of suicides, traffic deaths, and opiate overdoses. And so these aggressive corporate entities are killing us, and
Yeah.
they don't care. They're in complete denial. If they even recognize that they're doing harm, they don't really care. And again, that
Sure.
quote from the director of Netflix is amazing. He flat said their corporate goal is to take your sleep, which
Yeah.
causes suicides and traffic deaths and drug overdose deaths. And they don't care. So we
Yeah.
got to protect our children. We got to protect ourselves. And I want to give your listeners what I call some sleep hacks. And
Yes. I love that you said that, by the way. Just, and I'm really glad that you brought up the video games because I have a lot of people that are parents, including myself. And I heard you say this about 10 years ago at a seminar, and you showed the scans. And I didn't have a child at the time.
yeah,
And again, like you said in the show, I grew up on video games, and I'm like, I turned out fine, and I didn't see any problem with it. But when you see the scans, all the PET
yeah,
scans or whatever they are, uh, it's a huge difference. And I think you even alluded to in the past saying, hey, these video games are basically like stress inoculating and priming the kids to but it almost prepares them for the shooting. It's like
Yeah,
doing simunition training for first responders. It's like they've
yeah,
already done it in their mind, and
yeah,
so now we see this huge uptick of school shootings.
yeah,
And I really appreciate you bringing
yeah.
that to light. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. They
And
don't
again,
make
that's
that
not my book,
correlation.
Assassination Generation. These school shootings are worldwide. They say, oh, it's only happened in America because of our guns. No, it's not. Finland's had 3 multiple homicide by a juvenile in the school. The single worst multiple homicide by a juvenile in the school was in Germany. Germany's had, there one in Moscow, a juvenile bringing a gun into school in Moscow committing a multiple homicide. They're worldwide. What's the new factor? Not every kid that plays these games becomes a killer, but all the killers played these games. Yeah, I
Yeah,
tell everybody when I was a kid, I never buckled my seatbelt. Early mid 60s, every car had seatbelts, but nobody used them. And I was fine. Every kid
yeah,
I know was fine. Not every kid with a seat belt unbuckled died, but all the ones that died had their seatbelt unbuckled.
yeah,
It's a risk factor. And protecting your kids from these things. And we talk in our book, Assassination Generation, as a minimum, enforce the ratings. And your standard should be higher than the video game industry standard, but the most popular game out there is Fortnite. It's just the current state of the art addictive game, and it's rated T, 13 and above only. But you would never know that. Oh, your 8-year-old can play Fortnite and have fun. Your 10-year-old can play Fortnite and have fun. I had to dig. I know how to look, and I had to dig for 5, 10 minutes to find out what the rating was on Fortnite. Because they're not going to tell you this game
yeah,
is rated T, 13 and above only. They're not going to tell you that. And so this whole dynamic of protecting your children from this toxic world of these violent images. If you're going to watch TV, watch reruns of Bonanza, because there's another dynamic happening out here, and that is defund the police.
Oh, we got to talk
Who,
about this.
who in the world would think that if we get rid of police, the world will be better? And I'll tell you where that came from. When I was a kid, I watched Sergeant Friday on Dragnet, just the facts, man. One Adam 12 and Marshall Dillon on Gunsmoke. I had the lunchbox baby. I wanted to be Marshall Dillon. But today, they watch Breaking Bad and Son of Anarchy and Soprano, where the criminals are the heroes.
They're the good guys.
The
Yeah.
criminals are the heroes and the cops are the bad guys. Name me one cop movie in 30 years. Didn't have a bad cop in there somewhere. Y'all cheer when the bad cop dies. Training Day, Denzel Washington. Denzel's a bad cop. I've seen the movie. They're all
Yes.
bad.
Yep.
And so here's the key. When children watched those, it was real to them.
Yep.
Children, when they're young, right up till about the time they learn to read, right around 7 or so, what's on TV and movies and real life are all jumbled together. And the dreams, quite a while back, my son told my wife, he said, my son, now he was in his 30s then, he said, did I tell you that or did I just dream it? She said, I think you must have dreamed it. You ever been there? So
Yeah.
with children, their dreams in real life and TV are all the same. So they say that the criminal quickly forgets the victim, but the victim never forgets a criminal.
Yeah.
And we victimize those children. We victimize those children by having cops do evil things. And from the youngest days, they saw cops doing evil things, and they were doing it to them. Right up to the 1960s, Hollywood operated by a code. They said, we know the stories we tell will have an impact on our society. And we have a responsibility to tell good stories that reinforce good citizenship. They said, we will not depict crime as being successful. We will not depict overall cops as being bad guys. We will depict cops and robbers, and the cops are the good guys and the robbers are the bad guys. But now they turned that on its head.
Yeah.
And you can understand when this anti-cop propaganda was fed to children, they were traumatized and brutalized by cops. And then we have the crazy media. We got this case in Minneapolis. That was not intentional murder. At
Right.
best, it was negligent manslaughter. Oh, that was murder. Oh, it wasn't. And the
Right.
media presents it as murder. And now, oh, he got off. No, he didn't. He was tried for manslaughter. The worst that happened that day was negligent manslaughter. This is not murder. But the
Right.
media convicts him. Here we got this case in Louisville, Brianna. Oh, yeah, the cops murdered that girl. Her boyfriend shot at him and the cop shot back and she was in the way. Choose better boyfriends. No, that's not the answer.
Tell the
But
full story, right?
yeah, but understand that when those cops were not convicted, people said, well, they committed murder. They should be convicted. No, they didn't. At
Yeah.
worst, it was negligent manslaughter. Had no intention of killing her. It was an accident.
Right.
And so this media convicts them in the news, and then later on when a jury actually gets a chance, we've been convicted in the media. We should be convicted by a jury of our peers in a court, but the media has taken over that role. And you have the right to be convicted by a jury of your peers, and you've got to have beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yep.
Our system is set up that it's better for a criminal to go free than an innocent one would be convicted. If we err on the side of letting the criminal free before we will convict an innocent person. That's our judicial system. Gangbangers get off every day because this is designed beyond a reasonable doubt. If
Right.
we err on the side of letting a convicted man go rather than convicting an innocent person. That's we all agree that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But then when the cops get the same right to court that the criminals do, and a jury of peers doesn't convict him, oh, he got away with murder. And so we got this whole dynamic of the evil cops committing evil deeds, getting away. And then now we got this whole dynamic. Where'd that come from? It all began with telling sick stories to children. So if you are going to watch TV, watch reruns of Bonanza
Yeah,
and
seriously.
keep them away from all that stuff that's out there today. It's evil and no big deal for adults. But we got to understand we draw the line when these things are presented to children. It is a new factor and it is doing great harm to our society.
Yeah, and I'm sure, I know you know this, Colonel, but they say now, like, the prefrontal cortex, the decision-making part of the brain is not even developed till you're, like, 25 years old, so when it's being bombarded with all this video games and stimulation, it's gonna have a downstream effect on the brain. I mean, we know
Yeah.
that now with
Yes.
better research, so
You before we go into the sleep hacks real quick, when we talk about children, I've heard about it one time, and I've always run with it. And it's so brilliant. It's called the last half hour effect. And whatever you do in the last half hour before you go to bed, is what you tend to think about. All of
mm,
us have done some job, and we come home, we collapse in bed, and dream about work. We dream about work. Well, the best gift you could give your children is to sit next to them, hold them in your lap, and read a book to them. And the last 30 minutes of every day, they can have a terrible day, but you can program their dreams. And what we dream about is what we process into long term memory. And they could have had just a horrible, awful day. But the last 30 minutes, you hold them in your lap and you read a book to them. And they've got closeness, they've got comfort, they've got the written word, they've got your voice. And that's what they're going to remember out of that day. That's what they're going to process into long term memory. There's a beautiful book called the Read Aloud book about reading aloud to your children. And it begins with a poem about how I had a mother who read to me, and it was the greatest gift that, it's this beautiful, beautiful thing. This read aloud to your child. My three boys, I was deployed a lot, but when I was home, I worked jobs where I get home, I'd start my day at 5 and get home at 7, and stagger into the house. But I always got there before bedtime. And I would sit down. We read very immediately. We started reading what we call chapter books. A real book with real chapters and words. We
yeah.
read through the whole Narnia series. We read through the Oz books. We and right up until they were mature teenagers. I mean, right up until the mid-teens, it's something we did together.
Yeah.
And again, I wasn't home much, but when I was there, the kids turned out okay. There's all kinds of random factors that could have made it turn out bad. There's things parents can't control, but what I could control turned out to be okay. I think the greatest and most important gift is to turn off that media as much as possible and to read to them every night.
Yeah,
And it
I
is
love
a
that.
beautiful gift you can give to them. So let's talk about sleep hacks real quick and
Yeah.
dirty. All right, the first thing to understand is shift work. And law enforcement agencies, cops want to go to 12-hour shifts. And every time we do that, it's a disaster.
Mm,
Look, you're a little sleepy hollow. You go to 12-hour shifts, you go from 2 accidents a year to 6 accidents a year. It's hard to make much out of it, right?
yeah.
But you're at California Highway Patrol, you're 10,000 people went to 12s and dropped it a year later like a hot rock. And again, I can't give the specific data, but if they went from 30 accidents a year to 100 accidents a year, that's the kind of thing that's happening. They
Yeah,
go
that's huge.
from 100 complaints a year to 300 complaints a year. Those are the kinds that are happening. At the end of a 12-hour shift, people are exhausted. You're not getting 12 hours work out of them.
No,
And
you're not. I've been
tired
there before.
people do things and say things we'll regret. And so here's the deal. They want to be like firefighters, work 12-hour shifts, get all that time off. Well, firefighters get to sleep on the job. Only firefighters and prostitutes make money in there. Then you are no firefighter, baby. So
We love the firefighter.
just do a little research. Things are doable. The 10-hour shifts appear to be doable. Got to put a hard cap on it. But the most important thing of all is rotating shifts. We are killing people by rotating shifts. It is the most harmful thing we could possibly do. It takes up to a full year to fully adapt to night shift. Every time you
Yeah,
rotate shifts, you're giving everybody jet lag. There is
yep,
nothing you could do to destroy the performance of every one of your people like rotating shifts. It gives them jet lag. And the rotating shifts takes years off people's lives and it destroys families. Families handle day shift, families handle night shift. They cannot handle rotating shifts. Now, don't cop a pity party out there if you can't control your shifts and you have to rotate shifts. But understand, it's not a good thing in the long haul. We want to, the police association, the police union, yeah, we want to rotate shifts, baby, and we want 12-hour shifts. Well, look at the data. I tell the departments, if you're rotating shifts, start saving money now. You're going to be sued. You're going to be successfully sued. You're destroying their performance. You're taking years off their life and you're destroying their families. The old timers knew what they're doing. Bid for your shift based on seniority. You want to
right.
stay at nights for that thing? Good for you. Stay at nights. It took a long time to adapt to nights. Stay on nights. You want to move to days? You have the seniority. You've earned it. It's the only fair way to do it. But the newcomers come on board says, I don't want to wait to get seniority, be on day shift. This is no fair. Well, suck it up, buttercup.
Yeah, suck it up.
Rotating shifts is the most harmful thing we could possibly do. And we can't keep getting away with that. But again, most of the guys listen, they can't handle the shifts and things. So let me give you some solid nuggets. Sleep 101 begins with nap 101. Nap's our
Oh,
friend. Big Easel, I write nap. But 30 minutes is a minimum nap. It's not a good nap, it's a minimum nap. Anything less than 30 minutes, pretty much a waste of time.
really?
And it takes about 30 minutes to fall into deep cycle. So you're driving down the road here, Bob, take the little micro naps. We've all had those little micro naps.
Yes, yes.
Put your head down for 10 minutes, the alarm goes off, kind of a startle response.
Right.
But as far as sleep deprivation goes, a 10-minute nap was a total waste of time.
Wow, okay. So I
Set
thought
the
you might
alarm.
get in a too deep of a state if you go to 30 minutes, but you say no.
Yeah, it sets your alarm for 30 minutes,
Okay.
and the alarm goes off, and you're bleary and groggy and don't want to get up because you're asleep.
Yeah.
It took 30 minutes to fall into sound, deep cycle. I want to get back. I'm going to sleep. So that means the snooze alarm is not our friend. One of the great life hacks I give you right now, never touch that snooze alarm again. Do some research on that. It's like you're trying to force your body to fall into deep cycle sleep in 10 minutes and you can't do it.
Yeah.
This snooze alarm is actually an instrument of torture. Waterboarding is for amateurs when you're in a hurry. If you really want to destroy somebody, if you really want to destroy a human being, wake them up every 10 minutes. And
Mm,
in a few days, there will be an absolutely shattered human being.
yeah.
The 10-minute, the snooze alarm is truly instrument. The snooze alarm is an evil little button that makes you relive the worst part of every day over and over again. And you truly are not getting quality sleep. What you're doing is you're throwing away 10 minutes of your life. Get a
Yeah.
10-minute snooze, another snooze, a third snooze. You just threw away 30 minutes of the day. You and anybody in the room with you. Those three snoozes know as far as sleep goes, know as far as your life goes. You threw away 30 minutes of the day to trick your body and go into thought sleep. I will teach you a trick that'll put 30 minutes of quality sleep back in every day. That adds up to 3.5 hours sleep back in every week, 2 pure, beautiful nights sleep back in every month, 24 nights sleep back in every year. Very simple. Set the alarm a half hour later and get the hell out of bed. And set your cell phone 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Set 10 alarms for the same time. By the time you turn all those alarms off, you're up. And the you that goes to bed at night has got to make the you get up in the morning, get out of bed. And maybe here's the key: self-discipline,
Yeah.
self-control. Are you in charge of your body, or is your body in charge of you? Is the
Mhm.
first act of every day to surrender to your body, hit the snooze alarm, or it's the first act of every day to take charge, roll out of bed? So
Like that.
they do research. You give a kid a marshmallow, tell them, I'll be back in 3 minutes with another marshmallow. You don't eat that one, you have them both. That is the greatest predictor of success in life, more than IQ. You cannot change your kid's IQ, you cannot change your IQ, but you can change your self discipline right now, beginning when the alarm goes off tomorrow morning. I'm in charge of my body in charge of me. Have
I
you
love
got
that.
have you got the willpower to suck up a slug and drive on? Are you in charge of your body? Can you suck up a slug and drive on? Or is the first after every day to surrender to your body? Muhammad Ali, boxer, great champion. Muhammad Ali said championship began every morning the alarm went off. He hated running so bad, he put his running shoes on top of the alarm. He hit the alarm, he grabbed his running shoes. That's champion willpower. Have
Yeah.
you got it? Or is it first after every day to surrender to your body? And so it's, those of us been in the military, or if we had the opportunity to be in a live in an academy, when the drill sergeant get out of bed, we got the hell out of bed. And we learned a skill. I'm in charge. I got to get up. I get up. People who've never been in the military, people who've never been in the academy have got a little bit of a disadvantage. They got to do it themselves. We had the drill sergeant do us.
Yeah.
He trained us really early on. You were not a bed, boom, he dumped the bed over and boom, hey,
Yeah.
lesson learned the first day.
Yeah.
And so it's a skill, but you can teach yourself that skill. You can teach your children that skill.
I
That I'm
love
in
that.
charge of my body. My body's not in charge of me. And so the naps are our friend. This snooze alarm is not our friend. The dark is our friend. You may
Yeah.
not get one more minute of sleep, but you'll get quality sleep if you do it in a totally dark room. I'm a huge science geek. My favorite website is sciencedaily.com. I check it daily through most categories. At major research in the sleep lab, totally dark room. Docs say even the glowing dial of a clock is too much. Totally dark room. Bathroom light is on and the door is shut. The light coming out of the crack of the bathroom door is enough light to stop your body from producing the melatonin that you need. We're designed to
Great.
sleep in the dark. So, and if you're doing shifts, you work during the night, you try to sleep during the day. It's almost impossible to get a room completely dark. Aluminum
Yeah.
foil over the window is the best bet. But combine, make the room as dark as you can, and wear a sleep mask. In the military, we issue those sleep masks out by the fistful, give them to everybody. Look
Oh,
like
wow.
a Lone Ranger without the eye holes. We give those masks in the military. My grandson just went off to college. And he knows, he's heard my class. He knows about sleep and sleeping in a dark room. And he's in a room with one other guy in the dorm. And I gave him as a graduation present a couple of different sleep masks. Say which one works for you. These are two of my favorites. But sleeping in the dark, and teach your children to sleep in the dark. Babies are sloshing with melatonin. Babies can sleep anywhere. But as we grow older and older, the body produces less and less melatonin. By the time we become teenagers, it's important to sleep in a totally dark room. Remember, that light is stopping you from producing the melatonin that you need. You're getting bad quality sleep. So teach your kids to sleep in the dark, and especially teenagers. They stay up all night long and play video games. When do they sleep? During the day. What's going on?
Mm.
Sun coming through the window. You remember, sleep deprivation and killing our kids, the three major killers of our kids: suicide, traffic deaths, and drug overdoses. And the three major killers of our kids is all linked to that sleep deprivation and sleeping with the sunlight coming in the room. So strive to get that totally dark room. This is a piece of hygiene that we're beginning to understand. I work with the lady who introduced the concept of emotional intelligence, EQ, right? We have IQ, we have EQ.
Yeah.
And we talk about what's the baseline for EQ? Yeah, baby, I got EQ. I got EQ coming out my brains. I got EQ coming out my ears. I'm Mr. EQ, baby. Come on.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see baseline standards, Mr. EQ. You take a shower a couple times a week. Oh yeah. You change your clothes every now and then. Oh yeah. You get 7 hours sleep every night. Sleep is for the dead. You have failed the EQ test. You have
Oh, wow.
failed the fundamental test of human intelligence and self-control. You failed. And the most fundamental aspect of being a human being, Mr. No EQ, get out of here. So this is the great epidemic. And the thing to realize is sleep is a biological blind spot. It
Yeah.
always happened naturally. It got dark. There was nothing else to do. And then we invented the light bulb and the television and the video game. And so our bodies don't know how to make us get enough sleep. It's a biological blind spot, and we got to make it happen. It's the primary area where our technology is killing us.
Yeah.
It's like, the Romans had lead in the water. They had lead in their wine. They had lead in their utensils. They didn't know they were killing themselves with lead. They didn't know.
Yeah.
And we're killing ourselves with the technology when it gets in the way of our sleep. And our children. Children should be outside going 100 miles an hour, climbing trees and running through the woods. And when it gets dark, you read to them for half an hour and they're so exhausted, they fall asleep. But instead, they play video games, and there's mental dynamics happening here, but there's no physical exertion involved here. And when it's time to go to bed, their bodies are designed to be exhausted at the end of the day. Their bodies are designed to play and hunt and hunter gather and do all the things you need to do all day long. And kids, they should never stop. They're in the playground. They got two speeds, fast and off.
Yeah.
And so that the dynamics of physical exertion. So the dark is our friend, and teach your kids to sleep in a dark room. Nicotine is not our friend. Don't wake up in the night, have a smoke. It's one place to use some discipline. Alcohol is not our friend. There's nothing wrong with the nightcap. One beer on the way to bed doesn't appear to be a problem. Any more than that has a really negative impact on our sleep. I'm a huge fan of the fitness tracker. If I could give every cop a present, I'd give them I think the Fitbit Charge 3 might be the best. It's waterproof, wear it in the shower, wear it in the tub. Wear that fitness tracker. It will track your heart rate throughout the day, and that's critical data. It will track your steps, your calories, and your sleep and your cycles of sleep. And it's idiot proof. You download the app to your cell phone, and you wear that fitness tracker, and it will tell you, as an adult, you need at least 7 hours of sleep a night. You've gotten 4 hours of sleep for the last 2 months. You can't keep doing it this way.
Yeah.
And we got to be able to manage our sleep like we manage our money. It's a biological blind spot. We got to make it happen. So
I love that.
so wear that fitness tracker, pound down 3 beers, and go to bed, and see what it does to your sleep. You'll fall quickly into a shallow sleep. You'll wake up in a couple hours and can't get back to sleep. Any more than one drink on the way to bed is really counterproductive to your sleep cycle dynamics. Caffeine can be our friend. It's a powerful, effective, useful drug to limit your vulnerability to sleep deprivation if you're not abusing the drug on a daily basis. You need a quadruple shot latte to get going in the morning,
Ooh, that sounds
64-ounce big gulp Mountain Dew to carry you through the morning, another quadruple shot latte at lunch, a six-pack of Rock Bull Star
sounds like my
Monster.
day.
You're abusing the drug. We all seen little crackheads and meth heads who they're mainlining the drug and getting nothing out of it. That's what's happening to people with caffeine. They're putting mega doses of caffeine in their body and barely staying normal. So here's the challenge. And
Maybe the
take the
people in the
time.
Tenderloin are on a lot of caffeine then. Maybe that's what it is that I've
It's
seen.
part of it. Always part
Maybe.
of it. Our entire civilization is riding a caffeine abuse. It's again that sleep deprivation, the caffeine abuse is the dominant pathology in our entire civilization at this point. So here's the key: cut off all caffeine for one day.
Ooh,
If you get withdrawal symptoms, and that's what's happening, those are withdrawal symptoms: headache, shakes, digestive problems, irritability. If you cut off caffeine, you get any withdrawal symptoms. is living proof you're abusing the drug. And when you need it, it will not be there for you. So taper off slowly. And here's what we know: the half life of caffeine in your body is about 5 hours. That means the caffeine you took at 5 p.m. is still at half strength when you go to bed at 10 p.m.
Yep.
And it's stopping you from getting that deep cycle sleep. Remember, deep cycle sleep is critical. Lack of deep cycle sleep creates chronic pain. And lack of deep cycle sleep may be the single greatest predictor of Alzheimer's. It's the caffeine after lunch that stops you from that deep cycle sleep, which creates chronic pain and which is a tremendous factor in Alzheimer's. And that should get our attention.
Yeah.
So, you cut off caffeine shortly after lunch. Then when you need it, it'll be there for you. And the source of caffeine appears to be important. Coffee drinkers across the board are living several years longer than non-coffee drinkers. People say, I must be immortal then. But here's
I
the
drink a
thing.
lot of coffee.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
here's what we know. Coffee and tea both are very good for us. And a cup or two of coffee and tea at breakfast, cup or two at lunch, then switch to decaf, have all you want. And the sodas are a carcinogen. I think coffee is so good for us just
Yeah.
because the other stuff is so darn bad.
Yep.
Sodas are sugary poison. Now, one soda a day is like one candy bar a day. But if your only form of hydration is sodas, like the only form of nutrition was candy bars. And the diet sodas might be worse. The data keeps
Yeah.
stacking up. Again, one diet soda today, no big deal. If your blood type is Diet Coke, if that's your only form of hydration, you got a problem.
Yeah.
And the energy drinks are condensed poison. Now, we've been at war for 20 years. We're now in our 20th year of war. For the first 15 years, we passed out water like candy. That energy drinks. They gave us energy drinks by the pallets. We passed them out their tubes. Aren't we nice guys? And then two major Department of Defense wide study of the energy drinks. And as of about 5 years ago, for all practical purposes, there is a complete ban on issuing energy drinks to the troops.
Wow, that's
There's
huge.
nothing good for you in those things. In an academic environment, the one taking most energy drinks were the ones with the worst grades. In a tactical environment, the one taking most energy drinks were the ones most likely to nod off on the job. They
Wow.
do the opposite of what we think they do. They don't make us better students. They don't make us better cops. They make us worse. All there is in that energy drink is a mega dose of caffeine and sugar and some stuff to make you metabolize it quickly. It will
Mm.
give you a 1 hour burst of physical ability before a PT test, before an athletic event. One energy drink is not a bad idea. Any other time, the first one is good for about an hour, then you crash.
Mm.
Second one feels good for 10 minutes, you crash. Third one feels good for 5 minutes, you crash. After the first energy drink, you're doing nothing but building up your tolerance to caffeine and making and doing greater and greater harm to your body. We got people in their 30s who have the heart of an 80-year-old man because the energy drinks are absolutely destroying their hearts and destroying their bodies.
Wow.
They're poison. And we should be deeply concerned about the people pounding those things down constantly. Again, in the military, we know that it's bad for academics. It's bad for performance. I had a guy the other day he said, yeah, but I have an energy drink before every workout. No, 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 no. Save the energy drink for the competition.
Mm.
Save the energy drink for your personal best. Maybe one day a week, one day a month. Shoot for your record. Shoot for your personal best.
Yeah.
But don't do it every day before you work out because that's counterproductive. You're building up a tolerance to caffeine. And then when it comes to actual performance without the caffeine in your body's not going to be able to function. You want to be able to pull out those stops anytime, anywhere, not with that mega dose of caffeine. So it's something we use in specific circumstance as we strive for our personal best, maybe weightlifting or running, as we strive for an athletic event or before a PT test. But that's the only place those energy drinks are doing any good. And so those are life hacks that we can begin to apply right now. Boom.
Those are
And
so good.
yeah,
I wanted to ask you really quick on sleep. Just two things. One, when it comes to shift work, I've done a lot of just research on sleep and shift work. It seems terrible because like at 10 o'clock from 10 to 2, we get the sleep or hormones, growth hormone, and all these good things are forming at that time during sleep. But if you're working shift work, You're not getting that. So my question is, do you think there is any hack for shift work? And then I wanted to also ask you, what are you personally doing for sleep? Do you like melatonin, or like
Yeah,
what are some things that
yeah.
you do?
I think that there can be hacks if you've got to do shift work.
Yeah, if you have to.
I think again, limit your caffeine and then use caffeine to get you on the right cycle. Whatever your shift is, when you wake up, cup it to a coffee. Whenever your equivalent of lunch would be cup it to a coffee, then switch to decaf.
Mm,
And again, if you start shifting your caffeine, the shift changes, your caffeine changes, and that's a great body cue. It's a great cue to your body. And again, also make sure you're sleeping in a totally dark room, which
yeah,
is hard when you're
yeah.
working night shift during the day. I mean, the military, our pilots are fanatical about sleeping in a totally dark room and getting quality sleep. And the media trains, and the military trains the pilots, put aluminum foil over the window to block out all light. They
Wow.
don't do that, just keep the brain waves out, right? But there's other things you can do. When you do your shift change, all right, so you go from days to evenings, right? And you go to evenings, but you can still have the same sleep time. You sleep before you go to work, or you sleep after you go to work, and try to keep that sleep time as stable as you can. So, you make a shift change, but you can still have your sleep be the same. You sleep before you go to work, you sleep after you go to work. Try to create as much stability as possible in your sleep cycle. So let's say you cycle, you do days, you do evenings, you do mornings. Well, somewhere in there, you're going to have to change your sleep cycle. Then one of those three, but the two out of three, you can keep your sleep consistent. And so there's a lot of hacks that we can do. Food. You roll over, you get a good meal, you get the light turned on, you get a couple of cups of coffee. Those are all powerful biological cues. And I am a big supporter of melatonin.
Yeah.
I take melatonin on a steady basis. I think that as you get older and older, the body produces less and less melatonin. I think about your age, just a little baby dose of melatonin. Yeah, I forget. I think it's milligrams are measured in, but just 2 or 3 milligrams. I take 5 milligrams every night to sleep,
Yeah. 5
and
milligrams. That's the standard dosage. Yeah.
yeah, and I think when you're younger, start with a lower dose and see how it does and how your sleep is, and use your and that's where that fitness tracker is so valuable.
Yeah.
Use your fitness tracker and track your sleep and your quality of sleep. So if you're using melatonin, 5 milligrams, kind of that baseline. I really think you start a little lower. And if you and I checked up on this and I was saying something wrong. I said, you can't do too much. Your body just pisses out what you don't need.
Yeah.
But then some research came out and said, that's not right. And I really try to say with the latest research, you can get to a point where your body stops producing melatonin itself because you're doing it artificially.
Oh,
And
really?
the data's there. I think that data that's fairly new research, but I think it's solid research. So you should stay with as small a dose as you can that's still doing the job. And again, as we get older and older, the body produces less and less melatonin. On
Yeah.
your 20s and your 30s, a 2 milligram melatonin on your 20s and 30s, I think is a really reasonable dose. By the time you get in your 40s, I'm 64. It's my prayer to do what I do for the next 20 years. And I think I have a 5 milligram every night, and the time may come to
Yeah.
bounce that up a notch. So I think melatonin and I'm big on longevity stuff, and I
Yeah. Yeah.
do a lot of research on that. I do a lot of supplements, and one guy said, as far as availability, price, and and impact, melatonin may be the best longevity drug. That's just one doc's opinion.
Wow.
But we trace longevity with yeast, worms, flies, rats, monkeys, and humans. That's kind of like the evolution. And in yeast and worms and flies and rats, at least, melatonin appears to be increased longevity by about 10, 15, maybe 20%. My wife is kind of a
Wow.
skeptic. She says, my wife
Dude.
says, oh, the worms in your body will live 20% longer. Great. So, it's hard to
You're
create
probably
these
right.
studies, hard to do the longevity studies with people.
Yeah.
And so there's, in the life hacks, but I'd like to introduce two other kind of life hacks for everybody out there, I'm telling a story. I went to Ranger School, and we go through several cycles. The first cycle of Ranger School, you're in the barracks, and then you're doing patrol operations in the Fort Benning area. Then you go to the mountain phase, then you go to the jungle phase. And over the years, they put a desert phase in. They took it back out again. But in Ranger School, you go days without food and days without sleep. And that lack of food, lack of sleep, you know, it doesn't teach you I don't need sleep. It teaches you what a useless zombie you are without sleep.
Yeah.
And Ranger School didn't teach me I don't need food. Ranger School taught me that always have food in a pocket somewhere, Uh, but if I have to go a day without food, it's no big deal. A lot of people go a day without food, the body panics. No food, no food. Oh no, we've never been here before.
Right.
I think fasting. I think maybe periodically, 24 hours without food, and is you get used to it. You begin to realize I'm in charge of my body. My body says wants food, but I'm not going to give it food for 24 hours. I'm in charge. And periodic fasting it appears to be a factor in longevity too. Another topic, another subject I don't really delve into. But so I went to Ranger School, and I was just this ball of fire, man. I was just this guy just going there and doing things. We'd be doing you get a long line of 20 guys going across a creek. And bust them. You go. That squad goes left. That squad goes right. We cross it in three places, join back up, and cut the time to a third. And we're out there just doing things like that. And so we get back from the first about 3 weeks or so of Ranger School, and we're turning our equipment back in. We've gone again. We've gone a day or two without sleep, day or two without food. It was just the beginning, and everybody's kind of and so we had a big, tall Marine in our platoon going to Ranger School with us, and he was in the outhouse, and he got the cargo pocket on your leg, and his map was in his cargo pocket. It fell in the outhouse, so it's sitting there, like a little flag in the middle of this shit.
Yeah.
And he says, guys, I dropped my map in the outhouse, and I can't reach it. I need somebody to hold me while I go in the outhouse and get the map. And everybody's like, oh, John, grown out. I said, you bunch of stinking Bravo Foxtrot, you bunch of dirtbags. He's not
Yeah.
asking you to get them out. He's just asking you to hold his stinking feet. And my buddy there, Jim Boyle, is my Ranger buddy. And I talk a little bit about Ranger School in my book on spiritual combat. My buddy Jim Boyle was there, big guy. I said, Jimbo, let's go tip this Marine in the shit. He's gagging and he reaches down, he gets the map, we pull it back out. And we all pour our canteens on and try to wash some of the shit up. So
Oh
we're
my
all in line
God.
now. We go to turn in our equipment. He turns in this map, and the ranger instructor takes it, throws it away. But shortly after that, I had been the first student body commander, and it was the most awful thing that ever happened to me. I had prior service enlisted and prior service things, so okay, Grossman, and nothing goes right in the first week of Ranger School. The best day of my life, they said, Ranger Grossman, you've been relieved. Ranger so-and-so, you're now the commander.
Thank
But
God.
before I did, I said, you bunch of stinking buddy foxtrots, you bunch of dirtbags, it's time for you to get your shit together and take care of this next chain of command. You got to get through the chow line fast. Your leaders aren't eating because they don't eat until the troops do, and we're out of time. And they're not eating. They're missing meals. They're missing sleep because you're screwing them over. Grab your food and run. Take care of the command. Get your stuff together. I just toot them all out. And I saluted and handed over command to the other guy. So here we are again, right? We just dipped this Marine in the outhouse. I said, you bunch of dirtbags. I'm done with you. He just asked you, bunch of you. So thing we do after that is a pure avowals, right? We all get pure avowed.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, they're going to pure me out. I don't care. A bunch of dirtbags. And we all hate Grossman. We all hate this dirtbag, right? So the ranger instructors, that's our TAC, and he called Jim Boyle and I in, and he said, Ranger Boyle, Ranger Grossman, you're going to split you up in two different platoons on the next as we go to the mountain phase. At least we're going to go to the mountain phase. We haven't been peered out. Okay. I said, sir, why are you doing that? He said, well, everybody in the platoon peered you number one and number two in the platoon.
Wow.
It's like, whoa. Now, when I went to the mountain phase, I just became another zombie, one foot in front of the other. If they'd have had honor graduate at the end of the first phase, I'd have been it, baby. We get in that second phase, and I just became another zombie, just putting one foot in front of the other. My body had never experienced all this sleep deprivation, this food deprivation. It was the kids that came from the Ranger Battalion. They went through their RIP program who had been pre-inoculated. But the point of it is, that when things go to hell, they turn towards that aggressive, go do it, I can do it, I want to do it kind of people. When they're tired and they're exhausted, they turn to those people. So I give a police example of this now. A guy named Mike Neal in Arkansas. And two white supremacists, a father and son, sovereign nation, had murdered two cops in West Memphis, Arkansas. And there's a dragnet as cops are coming from every direction. And a fish and game officer by the name of Mike Neal's coming from like 100 miles away at 90 miles an hour. And they're all kind of closing in, looking for this vehicle, looking for these people. And he pulls into the Walmart. And these two idiots, his father and son, had murdered two cops and just got off their lives. They went shopping, they went to Walmart. And the sheriff, who didn't have a gun on him, the sheriff didn't even run for re-election. The sheriff's a destroyed human being. And a deputy was pinned down behind this police vehicle, this Crown Vic. And the father and son are hanging out the windows of their van, shooting these guys. So Mike Neal shows up, he gets online and said, well, we found your bad guys. They have two people undercover and they at the Walmart. And they kind of didn't believe him. They didn't want to believe it. So his vehicle is in the the National Law Enforcement Museum, but he revs his vehicle up probably about 40 miles an hour. A lot of people have seen the video of him hitting this van with his vehicle. The quickest way he had to get their attention and stop them killing these guys. And then he had his own AR 5.56 with his own ammo. He had selected a tap ammo. He wanted the penetration on the 5.56, and he grabbed his AR in the seat next to him, and through his own windshield and through their windshield, and in some cases through the metal in the vehicle, he killed them both. And recently, not too long ago, he was elected sheriff, and he told me, he said, "I'm the kind of cop other cops make fun of." He said, "They don't make fun of me no more.
Uh-huh.
They don't make fun of me no more. Be that kind of cop. Be that kind of cop." We all talk about Tackleberry, right? We all this,
Yeah.
this Tackleberry model. You don't want to, there's a limit, but you can push that limit. Be that kind of cop. That people, when things are going bad, when people are food deprived and they're sleep deprived, when things are falling apart, when things are coming unglued, they will turn towards that person with the energy. They will turn to the person with that drive.
Yeah.
And here's my major life hack. Well, the first of two major life hacks is be that kind of cop. I love that phrase. He's sheriff now, adored, respected. He'd been in several other shootings. He leads from the front. He shot more bad guys than the flu vaccine, and he's respected in Arkansas by the voters, and he's respected by his troops, and he leads from the front. And the words just they echo in me. I'm the kind of cop other cops make fun of. They don't make fun of me no more. So be that kind of cop. And other people, you're a threat to them. You're striving to a higher standard. But so they'll get along. When things come unglued, they'll be turning to you. When things go to hell, and you need to have that skill. And I use the example of Officer Greg Stevens at Draw the Prophet Muhammad Art Festival outside of Dallas, Texas. And I hold up a picture of President Obama putting a medal around this guy's neck. Now he's 49. He's 59 years old. He's 59 years old at the time of the incident. Just a few months later, had his birthday. He was 60 years old. 60-year-old man, Obama putting a medal around his neck. And so from this point on, Obama gave him the medal, right? He can do no harm. No matter what he did, it's okay.
Yeah.
And he was providing security. He was on a detail, providing security, off-duty time, getting paid at the Draw the Prophet Muhammad Art Festival, May of 2015, outside of Dallas, Texas. In the eyes of Islam, to draw the prophet is a terrible crime. These guys had the right to do it, and they're afraid it would draw bad guys, and it did. So two art critics from Arizona showed up with AK-47s and body armor. Could have been the Pulse nightclub times two. They had body armor. They had rifles. They had the element of surprise. Now, Officer Greg Stevens had never fired his weapon in a life and death event in 37 years. but he was providing security all day long, and he wasn't sitting in his vehicle. He said, if I'd been sitting in my vehicle, I'd be dead. He didn't have his head in his cell phone. He said, if I'd had my head in my cell phone, I'd be dead. He was standing doing his job, and a black car without a state license plate screeches to a halt at an unusual location. And they want to talk to you. They'd have stopped back there.
Yeah.
And both doors pop open. He's already in position one, or get good firm grip on his weapon.
Yeah.
Two bad guys with rifles roll out and open fire. Over 30 shots of rifle fire fired at him that won't hit once. He's hitting virtually every shot fired. He draws and fires, and basically an incredible act of marksmanship and skill kills them both.
Holy
One
cow.
of the greatest acts of valor in American history. And he wasn't a SWAT dog. He'd been a negotiator for a long time. You know, he was very calm. He had a sight picture of every shot, not a perfect sight picture, but a good one.
Yeah.
And I think being a negotiator might have had something to do with his ability to just stay in the zone there. But he wasn't a SWAT dog. He wasn't a competitive shooter. But his department had an open range once a month. Range is open, ammo's available. And once a month, Officer Greg Stevens is on the range. Oh, they're not even paying you. You're off duty. What do you go to the range for? Because I'm a Texas cop. I live on dirt.
Yeah.
And ammo is expensive. And the range is open and ammo is there.
Yeah.
I tell people for 37 years, once a month, Officer Greg Stevens made a deposit in his savings account. In May of 2015, he drew a major withdrawal.
Yep.
How much golfing could he have done when one sided him up for 37 years? How much time could he have spent with his family? And I tell people, the Bible says greater love is known than this. They give their life for their friends. But there's many ways to give your life. Maybe give one Saturday a month at the range. There's many ways to give your life. And I just encourage everybody, seek a hobby that reinforces your survival skills, marksmanship skills, martial arts. There's so many things we could be doing. At least seek a hobby that has cardio demands, running, swimming, basketball, softball, tennis, all have cardio demands. I got a motto runs through my sci-fi fantasy series. I use it. It's kind of a running gag in my classes. Piss on golf. Right? There's no survival skill found on the golf course. There's no cardio demands on the golf course. For us, the golf course is a willful and deliberate misuse of a perfectly good rifle range. And it's always fun to make fun of our golfers. They're always good
Yes.
sports. Sometimes they're our best shots. But the point for all of us can be, how can we better spend our time at the moment of truth to have what we needed? Officer Greg Stevens, in the military, I trained the Air Force security forces a lot. And they had a guy at Fairchild Air Force Base about going on 30 years ago now, who did an early mass murder. Wasn't even anybody's radar screen. Mass murder in the hospital, and then chasing people out of the hospital. And a security force airman by the name of Andy Brown comes up on a bicycle, and this guy's 70 yards away from him, shooting people. He draws his Beretta and fires a volley and hits with every shot. Hits with about 3 shots from 70 yards away, called the miracle shot. But it wasn't a miracle shot. It was a miracle of training. See, Andy Brown couldn't afford a Beretta, so he bought a Taurus knockoff. He bought the closest thing he could get and he could afford. And he bought the ammo, and he's at the range. They had a range open. They didn't provide the ammo. The range was open. And every weekend, for a little while, he was at the range shooting his ammo through his gun. And he did a lot of long shots. He did close shots, long shots, sport shots, mag changes, tactical changes. It was the miracle of training. And he, with his own money, with his own time, he practiced long shots for an hour. He'd just sit for an hour and practice hitting steel from 70 yards until he could tap steel. You know how fun it is to shoot steel, boom,
Yeah.
ding, boom, ding, boom,
Yep.
ding.
Get that immediate reaction.
Arnold Palmer, great golfer. Arnold Palmer was one time told, you get pretty lucky lately. He said, what's funny? The more I practice, the luckier I get. So
that's great.
be that kind of guy. Be that kind of person. Seek that hobby that reinforces your survival skills. Whatever it is you do in life, do it 100%. Do it with energy. Do it with all you got. If it's worthy of doing, it's worthy of doing completely and fully with energy. And people will turn to you in that time of need when things are coming unglued. You'll see that that's the kind of person they look up to. So one last life hack. When we talk about resiliency around the world, they talk about faith as one of the pillars of resiliency. And we talk about what we call an internal locus of control. Identify all the things in the world you can't control and let go of them.
Hmm.
Turn them over to higher power. The past. Everything in the past is done. You got to let go of it. Turn it over to a higher power. What other cops are doing, what superiors are doing, you can't control that.
Yeah.
Or the global, the national, you can't influence that except when you go to vote once every year. The
Lieutenant
only
Colonel, we have
thing,
a phrase in our organization that
yes,
the cops like to always say. It's a common phrase you hear within the organization, and it's "they're fucking us." And we joke around about it because, they're always that's what the troops are always saying, like, they're forcing a new policy down our throat, they're making us do this now, they're doing and now the mayor's making this happen, they're defunding us, whatever. And, so this goes right in hand with what
well,
you're saying.
the only thing in the universe you can control is yourself right now. If you give way to bitterness or cynicism or complacency or denial, that's the one thing in the universe you can control.
Yeah.
And you've given them a victory with your own hand. If they cause you to be bitter, if they make you to be hostile, if they make you to be angry, if they make you to be complacent, then you gave them that victory. That's the one thing you can control. It's
Mm,
not the thing itself, but the way that you respond to it that matters.
yeah.
And so having a higher power to hand things over to is really, really part of that dynamic. And my latest book is on spiritual combat. I got on killing, I got on combat, now we got on spiritual combat. And if it, it, you can't be at this job long without looking right in the eyes of evil. Now, most people we deal with are just confused. They need help. Some of them need correction. So we send them to a correctional facility for a while and see if they get this stuff together. But every now and then, you see the murder of children. You see terrible abuse of innocence. And you see just flat evil, to spine tingle. And if you, and who can deny there's evil in this world? Then you need to have a force for good to go against that evil. If you, and that's where that higher power comes from. You got to have a force for good and believe in a force for good if you're going to face evil. And so that's what the book on spiritual combat's about. And it's worthy of going to Amazon and look at the reviews and seeing why and how it worked. And kind of a follow on to that book, we actually wrote it first, but it's a follow on, is Bulletproof Marriage 90-Day Devotional. And you can use this life hack again. You can use faith as a life hack to leverage your relationship with your spouse. And that's what
Yeah.
that book is. I think the final and ultimate life hack is to realize that there's going to be eternity. The world says life is hard, then you die. God says, that to live is to be a beautiful thing and to die is even better. That to live is Christ and to die is gain. So, it makes your choice. Life is hard, then you die. Life's a crap sandwich. Every day I have to take a bite. Or there's another way to look at it. Life is beautiful and to die is even better. And the great adventure awaits us afterwards. And so those are the ultimate life hack, and sustain yourself over the long haul in the big picture. And it's such an honor to talk with you, Joel, and all your listeners out there. And we'll recommend this on my social media. We'll go some places here that we've done some things here I haven't done otherwise, and maybe we'll get you some new listeners out there. But
Yeah, no.
I love the concept of life hacks, getting those hacks and getting your life hacked and covered. It's such a neat idea.
Hey, something that came to mind when you were just saying at the very end, I had a question I wanted to ask you, and it was,
Yeah,
morale is at an all-time low for first responders and everything with defunding the police and just the protest. And I was going to say, what message would you deliver to the troops? But I feel like you answered it.
yeah,
And I feel like the answer is faith.
yeah.
And I would have never thought of that. And it reminds me of this Tony Robbins quote where he says, "Fear will fuck you, faith will unleash you."
Yes.
And I think you really
Oh,
just brought that home and just said, yeah, whatever you can control, like everyone's going to batter you up from the outside. But what can you control? Control that.
yeah.
And if you can control and live in a state of bliss, then life is good,
Yeah.
my friend.
People are doing that. People are doing that. This world can chew me up and spit me out, but I control. We get people come out of POW camps and Nazi death camps, And said the one thing they couldn't control was what was happening inside of me. And I was not going to give them that victory. It was
Yeah, don't give
amazing.
them that victory.
I'll give you one last angle on why we do what we do. All right, I'm 64 years old. I retired from the Army 23 years ago. With the exception of the pandemic, I've been on the road somewhere between 200 and 300 days every year for 23 years. Waiting at home for me is my bride of 45 years, my high school sweetheart. She was 15, I was 17 when I proposed to her. We are from Arkansas. 2 years later, she married a crazy Army paratrooper. Been in this ride with me for 45 years. I love her more than life itself.
So good.
But I spent more time away from her. I get home one, maybe 2 nights a week. Conjugal visit, clean underwear, back on the road. Because the only people on earth more precious than my bride are my grandchildren. And we believe if we love our children, if we love our grandchildren, if we love our nation, if we love our God, that we'll walk out that door and give 100%. I'm 64 years old, and it's my prayer I can do this for another 20 years because I love my children. I love
Yeah.
my grandchildren. I love my nation. I love my God. And in the end, that's the most powerful motivation on earth. The opposite of evil is not good. The opposite of evil is love.
Ah,
Evil is the absence of love. And God loves us intensely and fully, and He wants us to prosper and thrive. And like you said, faith will fuck you. But again, fear will fuck
fearful
you, but
fucking. Well,
faith will empower you.
yeah,
And so, and then the essence of faith is love. That's what it's all about. God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believeth in Him shall not perish, have everlasting life. And so, if you want to have something to face evil, it's love. The
yeah.
opposite of evil is love.
That's so
And
good.
and that's why I do what I do, and that's why you do what you do. Nobody can pay you enough money to die. What do you do? Kill me if I don't do it? To go put your life on the line every day, there's only one thing in the universe that will make a person put their life on the line, and that's love. Love for our fellow troops in combat. And I give the example of, and I talk more about him in the on spiritual combat. Christopher Amoroso, a police officer going up the World Trade Center for the third time on 9/11. And what could make a man when everybody else is running away, when thousands were running away from the World Trade Center and 400 cops and firefighters died going up the steps? Why did they go toward the danger? And really love.
Yeah,
The mama critter will die for one thing, her babies. Only her babies, not anybody else's babies. The sheepdog loves enough to die for other people's loved ones,
yeah.
but that don't make them heroes. They're heroes because they walk out the door every day prepared to lay down their life. This is in our Sheepdog Kids book. Sometimes the greatest love is not to sacrifice your life, but to live a life of sacrifice. And that's what it's all about.
So powerful.
To live a life of sacrifice because we love.
That's great. It's so powerful. Lieutenant Colonel, I want to wrap things up with just a quick lightning round of questions. Are you down for that?
Sure.
You're gonna like this, I promise. If the old you could see the new you, what would the new you say?
Just to climb deeper in your faith, to understand in the end the answer lies in faith and in deeper faith.
Yeah. Um, what are some choices that you made that you think made you who you are today?
I think it was the decision to be a sheepdog, to be a warrior. I went to. I've seen some movies when I was little, some TV shows, and I went to first grade. Didn't have kindergarten at that place in that point in time. First day of school, and the teacher as an icebreaker says, "What are you going to be when you grow up?" Everybody talking about it. And I said, "I'm going to be a soldier." That's all I ever wanted to do. And that decision, and then a book, and that's Starship Troopers by Robert Heinlein. It's only two science fiction. I'm a big science fiction fan. I read a science fiction series, but the only science fiction books back in the day that were in the officers' recommended reading list with all these was Orson Scott Card's Ender's Game and Robert Heinlein's Starship Troopers. And if you put 10 infantry officers together back in the day, five of them have read Starship Troopers and shoving it down the throat of the other five. But that was
Wow.
just a great influencer. A guy came in and enlisted in an elite unit. I was an airborne paratrooper. He went to OCS. He became an officer, and went back and served. That was like this life model for me, and it really did work. And it was this decision to follow that path and to go to OCS and to every step of the way to, just kind of be able to contribute at a higher level. That decision that in the first grade, I'm going to be a soldier. And then when I retired, I found out that life begins at retirement.
Yeah.
You think you're the old timer, among all your peers, you're the old grizzled dog. Then you get out and you realize you're not that old at all. In the world's eyes, you're still in your prime, and you are. And now you got a chance to make the greatest contribution after you retire. So plan on that long life and making contribution every step of the way.
That's so good. Um, what are some exciting projects that you're working on right now?
Well, I got a book. It come out early next spring.
Oh,
It's
all right.
called On Killing Remotely, and it's going to be a big deal. My
Yeah.
Facebook page, I just kind of put the cover on the Facebook page. Now I'm doing this with a guy. So I'm excited about this. Maybe 5 years ago, this Marine Corps lieutenant colonel says, I think we should write a book on killing remotely with drones and predators. He was in charge of a predator unit. He'd been a predator operator, been whacking terrorists with Hellfire missiles. And I said, man, this is an awesome idea. Here's what you need to do. Here's what I did with On Killing. Do your lit review. Look at everything written on the topic and collect the stuff that you want. Do interviews and surveys and collect all the information you can. And then sit down and organize that logically and get back with me. And he did. And it was just a home run hit. He just knocked it out of the park. And so I got him to my literary agent. My agent is one of the, I got linked up with him 30 years ago. He's one of the great professionals in this business. He doesn't take anybody else, but said this to Richard Curtis. Richard said, this is why I became an agent, to get books like this out there. And
Wow.
so it'll be out in the spring. It's called On Killing Remotely. And it talks about the psychological, what's happened to these guys? What should we do? What should we do better? What's the impact? What's the morality of it as far as our civilization goes, that we're choosing to do these kind of things? There have been similar dynamics throughout history. Piracy across the seas. Anybody caught in the act of piracy, the captain will hang them right now. Any nation, anywhere, you run into a pirate, you kill them right now. And kind of a similar dynamic with terrorism around the world. Well, whacking these people, they're clearly terrorists. They're invested in this international terrorism dynamic. The other book that's right behind it in the pipeline is on hunting, psychology and physiology of man the predator.
Ooh.
And I'm excited about that one. Auditory exclusion. We've gotten on life hacks about telling people, that the shots get muted and tunnel vision and auditory exclusion and memory gaps and memory distortions. Those are all forewarned and forearmed out of my book on combat.
Yeah.
The
Great.
only action you can engage in that consistently taps into that line of pool of responses to life and death events, and by that we mean primarily auditory exclusion, is hunting. Hunting and combat are very closely interwoven in our minds. It's the only only thing you can engage in, hunting, that consistently taps into all the dynamics that we see occurring to human body and life and death events. We talk
Yeah.
about buck fever, we talk about tunnel vision, we talk about auditory exclusion. Hunters don't hear the shot, and so I'm excited about that. It's going to be an important book, and it has what we call eco-radicalism. How are we going to protect the elephants? Well, here's what they're doing. One nation in Africa, the locals own this terrain, and the elephant and the lion and everybody else on that territory belongs to them. And so that American who's going to pay $50,000 to kill that tiger, which, oh, by the way, is only a year away from dying of natural death anyway. And, oh, by the way, dying a natural death in nature is a very horrible, slow, hideous act. You ever think about dying in nature of old
Yeah.
age?
Yeah.
They critters eat you alive. You're in agony for days while you're being eaten alive. Dying of old age in nature is not a nice thing. This is not Walt Disney. This is for real.
Yeah.
And so here's this lion a year away from dying anyway. And it's crazy. America won't pay $50,000 to come over and shoot him. It's a win-win deal. And the natives get the meat of whatever's being killed. He gets the lion head. He takes it home. They get 25,000. The lion was going to die anyway. So there's this weird dynamic. We see it in America with Ducks Unlimited and some of the other things. But hunters and the money from hunting really has become And we got this negative look at game hunting. We need to look at it from a more positive dynamic, understand the value that's being put into the system. Like I said, killing a critter that's at the, past their prime, that when we killed that buck with that great big rack, he's in his last year or two of life anyway. And you cannot emphasize enough that dying of old age in nature is a slow, hideous, horrible death. It takes days, as they eat you alive. It's a horrible thing. So
Yeah.
anyway, but it's going to be a neat book, and we're still looking for a publisher on that and kind of polishing that one up. And my agent Richard Curtis is Manhattan agent, wonderful friend, good man, but he really hasn't got any inlets into conservative dynamics. So he's not being very helpful. He just hasn't got the leads to be able to sell this book. So we're looking for a good
Ah,
publisher.
it'll
It's
happen.
exciting for us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. I know you're a big guy in like health and wellness. Is there anybody that you follow or that inspires you today that you like to
You
watch?
know, I read Science Daily, ScienceDaily.com every day. And especially in the first two medical categories. But then I get to the third category, there's a lot of repetition. I found you can see all the new stuff. And anytime they mention a study of a supplement that contributes to longevity, I give it a try.
Yeah.
So I go straight to the source. And I collect those articles and the supplements he be doing. So they're not a particular individual. For me, it's going through the original source. And it doesn't take long to scan through this recap in Science Daily and say, I'm going to try that supplement. I want to see what that
Yeah.
does. Yeah.
I
So
like
that's
that.
kind of my go-to. Yeah.
Any books? I'm a big reader. Are there any like 1 to 3 top books that you think had really had an impact on your life that you'd recommend other people read?
Well, Starship Troopers, Robert Heinlein, Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, are really creating this ethos. And
Yeah.
uh, I'm a big fan of C.S. Lewis, which is a big Christian writer, and he wrote a series called the Narnia series, which I read to my kids. I read through the whole series, chapter a night, and but it was an allegory from a Christian Protestant perspective. What people don't realize is Tolkien and C.S. Lewis were contemporaries in the same college, and Tolkien wrote the Lord of the Rings as a Christian allegory from a Catholic perspective. But both of them talk about virtue and honor and positive dynamics and contribution and overcoming harm. And I think those are really, uh, I read a lot of science fiction fantasy, and there's some good stuff happening there. But there's always good stuff out there, and we live in amazing times. I would download it in the Kindle. I'd go off for a week or I'd go off on a deployment and have a dozen paperbacks shoved in something, and now I just got my little Kindle and it's all on there, and it's a lot of fun. But yeah, I think part of your baseline as virtuous, honorable warriors and contributors and guardians. I think
Mm.
Starship Troopers is a great starting point, and then like I said, there's some fundamentals of ethics and virtue and valor and Lord of the Rings. It doesn't get much better than that.
I love it.
Read the series and then look at the movies, and it'll rock your world. It's good stuff.
Love it. Last question, and then we'll wrap it up. Any like rituals or hacks that you practice on like a regular basis? Like some people do gratitude journaling. Is there anything that you do on a regular basis?
Well, there is, and it's really my wife, bride of 45 years, is having some anxiety a while back, and I would pray for her as she went to sleep every night, and extensively. And
Mm.
it developed and evolved. And when I'm gone, every night she's ready to go to bed, I kiss her goodnight. I pray for her, and then she prays for me. But it said, I'll tell you what I pray for my bride. I said, dear God, thank you for all the blessings this day. And thank you for my darling Jeannie. Please bless and watch over and protect my Jeannie and all of her loved ones and all of her endeavors. Bless this girl with the best of blessings. Keep a host of angels about my Jeannie and her entire family to bless and protect.
Mm.
Fill her life with love and joy and great peace to be given and received to flow like a river through her life. Bless her with great health and happiness and prosperity. Bless her loved ones. And I'll run through our children's name and our grandchildren's names, and bless her now with a good night's sleep and a wonderful day tomorrow and sweet dreams tonight. In Jesus' name I pray. I was picked up by a cop a while back, and I was in California, and she was going to bed, and it's one of those things I try to do every night. And so I just kind of leaned away from him in the window and said my little prayer to her. And he overheard it. He said, "Is that's really a wonderful thing?"
Yeah.
He said, "You do that for your wife every night?" I said, "Yeah, yeah, every night." And so, the most important relationship you have is you and your spouse. It's a relationship that has to be invested in and nurtured, and and being able to love and forgive, and we just love each other's company because we accept each other. We accept each other. There
Yeah.
is
That's
her
huge.
gas, my snorting and snuffling, and we just won't use it. We can ignore that. And we love each other's company. We love each other's jokes. We watch shows together. And so anyway, it's a life hack, and maybe the most important one of all. And
Wow.
before that, it was reading to my kids every night. I would have told the most important life hack. Now we got grandkids that just went to college. The years go by.
That is so good. What a great way to end the show. Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman, thank you so much. And last but not least, where can people find you and your work?
I do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn.
Mm.
My son and I have a gun business, sheepdogknifeandgun.com. If you mention guns on Facebook, they kind of, they edit that out.
Censorship.
I found that LinkedIn has a whole lot more flexibility, a lot better control. I've got about 25,000 people on LinkedIn, and anybody who has to, link with me on LinkedIn, I bring them in. And I've got the on spiritual combat. I did like 40 memes that go with it, and great images with the text around it. I
Yeah.
posted them on Facebook. Uh, and my latest podcast, I'll post this podcast on Facebook. On LinkedIn. I post all that on LinkedIn. You go to LinkedIn and look at all my past articles, and I did a thing on how masks empower violence, and we got
Hmm.
to be very careful wearing masks. It can empower violence. It creates a sense of anonymity. It reduces the humanity.
Yep.
I wear a mask when the situation called for it because I know I don't want to provoke anybody. But a lot of negatives coming out of that we got to be aware of and deal with. So I got mostly there, but my website is killology.com, KILLOLOGY.com. And we got the books posted there, and then we've got we got sheepdogknifeandgun.com, and people are out of stock on guns everywhere. And my son is a master gunsmith, handcrafted 1911s at
Wow.
some really good prices that we're knocking out. And then we do some jiu-jitsu, martial art of the firearm guns that are based on that. Anyway, all that we do on LinkedIn and sheepdogknifeandgun.com. And but I mostly communicate to everybody. Killology.com, which kind of got the foundations, my CV. But I mostly try to pass info out to people through my LinkedIn connection.
That's great. I love it.
Hurrah!
Hoorah.
Stay safe, stay hard, and we
Thank
do
you,
what we
sir.
do because we love our family, we love our children, we love our way of life, we love our nation, we love our God. The thing about love is the worse it gets, the more determined you are. Give it all you got.
Ah, hoorah.
Wow. God bless, brother.
Thank you, sir.